Hi everybody, this is Bastiaan and today we're going to look at the Colle Zukertort system. I believe they already posted the game playing the Zukertort on YouTube, but that doesn't appear to be the case. So I may have posted another game somewhere else, but so I found this older game. I do not remember who I played against, but it's a nice demonstration on how to play the Zukertort system, and it also shows what you have to look out for when playing this system. So I'm playing white. Game starts with d4. Black plays d5. Knight f3, knight f6. e3, so we're seeing the Colle system. e6, bishop to d3. c5, so this is the book opening. And now one of my favorite continuations is the Koltanowski system, which is c3. Because if the pawn advances, then the bishop can fall back on c2. And after e4 advances, it can attack this pawn, and this pawn may become a weakness. However, the Zukertort system is the most popular variation of the Colle system. And instead of c3, the Zukertort move is b3. This move also prevents black from playing c4, which would push back the bishop, because if at this point c4 is played, pawn takes pawn, pawn recaptures, and bishop takes pawn, white is up a pawn. So c4 is no longer an option. What black may try in this position, which can be quite annoying, is queen to a5, check. So with the Koltanowski move, this move isn't possible because the diagonal is blocked by the pawn. But at this point, white doesn't want to play c3 or bishop to d2, because what white wants to do now is fianchetto the bishop and get two strong bishops on the diagonal. So it's important for white to castle early because of the queen attack. What white should do in this situation is continue the Zukertort system with knight to d2, and black can keep annoying white with the queen, say for instance queen to c3, attacking the rook and preventing bishop to b2, but then rook to b1, and white can develop the bishop, and if the queen retreats we can see that a2 is hanging, after which a3 can be played if needed, or frankly the threat can be ignored. White can simply castle, let black have the pawn, and continue with development, either e4, continuing the break in the center, or bishop to b2, because the pawn on a2 is not important in this system at all. So the queen attack is not too threatening for white and does not refute the system. Black plays knight to c6, developing the knight to the most natural square. Note that it can also develop to d7, which may complicate things for white, but this move wasn't played. White castles, so there's no longer an option for queen checks. Now at this point, black may play knight to b4, and this is one of the annoyances against the Zukertort system, because the bishop cannot fall back on the b1 h7 diagonal. It has to move on the e2 b5 diagonal. Now some engines recommend simply to play c4 at this point, allowing knight takes bishop and queen recaptures, and it's difficult to chase away the centralized queen. But then we're no longer in the Zukertort system. White could play bishop to b5 check, but after a bishop to d7, take, again our powerful bishop on d3 is gone. Perhaps the best move at this point is to retreat the bishop, and after say bishop to d6, White can force the knight back with a3, knight to c6, and then perhaps c4, and White may keep his bishop pair. So that's perhaps the best way to handle the aggressive knight attack from Black, but this move wasn't played. Typical continuation would be bishop to d6. This wasn't played. Black exchanges the pawn first, so pawn takes pawn. Pawn recaptures. And now queen to b6. So we're seeing two attackers and one defender on the pawn on d4. So it's time to fianchetto our bishop to b2, which adds more protection. Now, almost all of White's pieces are developed according to the system, only the knight needs to develop to d2. Finally, Black plays bishop to d6, so we're seeing standard developments, perhaps with the exception of the queen move to b6. Knight goes to d2. Black castles. And now I play c4. Now, c4 is a move that may or may not be played in the Zukertort system, but typically it's a good move to play. At this point, the pawn shouldn't be recaptured. Now, if say a random move is played like h6, I can punish Black by playing c5, forking both pieces. Yet recapturing isn't too good for Black, because if pawn takes pawn, I can recapture with the knight. Now, under some circumstances, I can recapture with the pawn and get a strong pawn island, but I can't do it yet because if pawn takes, of course, the bishop will be lost. So, knight takes, forking the queen and the bishop, and Black will lose the bishop pair. After which, White can continue development with rook to the open file and perhaps the other rook to the other half open file, with strong attacking possibilities on the diagonals. So this should be good for White. So at this point, c4 is played. Black doesn't recapture and plays queen to c7 to get out of the fork. And now I play rook to c1, and there are a few reasons for this move to be played. First, we can see that the c file is going to become open after pawn takes pawn or pawn takes pawn, which will leave the rook on the open file with a queen opposite to it, which is good for a White. And the second reason is that now this bishop can fall back to b1 without trapping the rook out of the game. So Black plays h6, I play rook to e1, rook to the half open file, knight to b4, so you're seeing Black's annoying move. But now we don't have to retreat the bishop anymore. We can fall back to b1. So c2 isn't an option because that's still covered. At b1 we're still controlling the diagonals. Also we are protecting the pawn from the knight if needed. And we can see now the importance of the rook on the strong half open file. Black plays pawn takes pawn. So I can recapture either with pawn, knight, or the rook. But at this point I'm having an isolated pawn on d4, which happens sometimes in Colle systems. So I recapture with the pawn. Of course, the other moves were also playable. But now I have a strong pawn island in the center. Black plays bishop to f4, pinning the knight. And what I would like to do now is play either queen to c2 or perhaps queen to d3 in cases, in order to create a mate threat on h7. However, both of those squares are covered by the knight. So first we need to get rid of the knight. A3 can sometimes be played, but in this case I play queen to b3, knight retreats, and I play d5. And now we can see the power of this pawn island and the rook on the half open file, because the pawn cannot be recaptured, because if pawn takes pawn, pawn recaptures, and I am attacking the knight with the discovered attack on the queen. So if knight to a5 to counter attack on the queen, I can play queen to d3, which will lead to mate after I take out the knight. So if say queen to d6 to get out of the attack of the rook, I can take out the knight and queen h7 is checkmate. So this is the main weapon in the Colle systems. That's this type of battery, which may or may not be played with an additional knight covering the h7 square. So after d5, recapturing the pawn is impossible, or black is lost. We're attacking the knight. So knight to a5 is played immediately, attacking the queen. And I can play my queen to d3. Again, putting the queen on the diagonal, looking for the mate. And we can see that the a1 f6 diagonal has become completely open. And we can take out the defender on f6. Black plays, let's see if black would try to play e5 in order to protect the knight. I can either simply take the pawn, because this square is covered twice. Black will lose a pawn, so that's good for white. Otherwise, I can even play g3 to get rid of the bishop. So if the bishop takes the knight, I can take the pawn on e5, threatening the queen. Queen moves, say, to d7. I can take the bishop, and I still have an attack with the mate threat. So if queen to f5, queen takes, bishop takes, bishop takes, I am up a minor piece. So that's a good continuation for white. If instead queen to b6 is played, I can play bishop takes knight. Then if say pawn recaptures, queen to h7 is made. Or if g6 is played in order to prevent the mate, black is down a minor piece. But black still has the threat on the rooks. So we retreat the bishop, attacking the queen. Queen moves, and we take out the bishop. With 3 minor pieces against 2, white is winning. So the e5 move, to protect against the loss of the knight, cannot be played. Rook to d8 is played to create escape for the enemy king. I take out the knight, coincidentally attacking the rook, but that's no longer important. Black recaptures. Queen goes to h7 check, and we can see that the king now has an escape. So all is not lost yet for black. King goes to f8. And now, how do we continue the attack? I play knight to h4. And we can immediately see that there are two pieces hanging. That's the knight on d2, is no longer protected, and the pawn on h2, where black has a battery with check. So it seems like an odd move to play knight to h4, but we'll see the point in a few seconds. Let's say if black were to try bishop takes knight, forking both rooks. In that case, black would be lost, because I can play knight to f5, and if black recaptures, we can see the e-file becomes open, and queen h8 would be checkmate. So black cannot recapture the knight. If instead king goes to e8, I can play queen to g8, check, king to d7, queen takes pawn, checkmate. So the knight to h4 move isn't bad at all, and actually it's a little bit of a trap for black to recapture the knight. Seems like a good move, but black will be mated. What black does play is bishop takes h2 check, and I play king to f1. Now bishop to e5. Black is trying to block the e-file in order to create escapes for the king. I take out the bishop with a sacrifice. Queen recaptures. And now knight to g6 check. Another sacrifice. Black recaptures and has solved this problem with the doubled pawns. But finally I can move my bishop in. Bishop to g6 check. Bishop to g6, threatening check and mate. Black plays rook to d7, queen h8 check, king to e7, and now c5. And c5 prevents black's king from escaping to d6, and it also threatens d6 check. If I were to play queen to e8 check, the king could flee. So we need the in-between move, c5, and it's all over for black. If queen takes pawn, queen goes to e8 mate, so that's not an option. f5 provides no escape because that square is covered by the queen, and rook to d8 was played, leading to queen to g7 check and mate. So that was my game playing the Colle Zukertort system. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching and have a great evening.